What is going on, everyone? Welcome back in to Behind the Arc Basketball on YouTube, and today I'm going to preview the last Final Four matchup, the number 2 seed, the Michigan State Spartans, going up against the number 3 seed, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Let's start off with Tom Izzo's squad, the Big Ten champions, the number 2 seed, the Michigan State Spartans. As they've made tremendous improvements throughout the entire course of this season, the Michigan State Spartans have. The season opener, they lost by 5 points against the Kansas Jayhawks, but after that, Tom Izzo improving his squad throughout the course of this season, each and every day, as Izzo has to go down as one of the greatest head coaches of all time in college basketball. He's now been to 8 Final Fours. He also won a national title back in the year 2000. This is his 21st NCAA tournament appearance. But this Michigan State team, despite the injuries, they've had players who have been able to step up on this roster and fill in and take over. And one of those players is guard and three-point go-to shooter, Matt Mcquaid. Matt Mcquaid shoots the ball at 43% this season from three-point range. That ranks third in the Big Ten Conference in three-point shooting, as he stepped up and filled in for Joshua Langford, who went down with a season-ending ankle injury in late December. Matt Mcquaid stepped up and filled in a big way. Langford was averaging 28 minutes per game and averaging 15 points per game when he went down with that season-ending injury. But after Langford went down and wasn't in the starting lineup, Matt Mcquaid filled the void. He saw an uptick in playing time minutes, and then he started to score double-digit points. He scored double-digit points in 13 games since the start of the new year for Mcquaid, including going off in the Big Ten title game against rival Michigan. That's where Matt Mcquaid scored 27 points. He converted on 7 three-point shots from the outside. Also, sophomore forward Xavier Tillman has shined in that starting lineup after Nick Ward went down with a hand injury against Ohio State back on February 17th. Xavier Tillman filled the void in there, and he was able to produce as well. As Xavier Tillman has produced 10 double-digit scoring games since February 17th, along with 4 of those games have been double-doubles this season, as in this March Madness tournament alone, Xavier Tillman is averaging 15.3 points per game and 8.5 rebounds per game. For Michigan State to move on to the national title game, they're going to need a huge game once again from Xavier Tillman. So it's very tough for your opponent to come play against you when your team has 2 big rebounders on the board, just like Michigan State does. Xavier Tillman, who I just talked about, one of the leading rebounders on the team, second in rebounds, right behind this guy in the lead for the team. That is Kenny Goins, who has 16 games with 10 or more rebounds on the season this year for the Michigan State Spartans. As well as the rebounding, Michigan State goes down as one of the best passing teams in all college basketball, averaging around 19 assists per game, led by this man, junior point guard and Big Ten Player of the Year, Cassius Winston, a veteran leader. What a leader Cassius Winston is, as Winston ranks 3rd in college basketball in assists per game this season, and he's the leading scorer on this team, averaging just below 19 points scored per game. Michigan State, in the tournament, they struggled in that first round against Bradley, but Winston, he got his team back to get the W in that game, as Winston led his team to victory. He scored 26 points in the first round game against Bradley. In the second round matchup against the Minnesota Golden Gophers in the round of 32, Michigan State, they had a 20-point lead, and then Minnesota cut that deficit to 9 points. The score was 40-31 at one point, but then Cassius Winston himself, the legend, took over in that game. He scored 7 points in a row in 1 minute of play to put Michigan State out, and that was the turning point of the game, and Michigan State blew by Minnesota in the round of 32. So they played sloppy games in there against Bradley and Minnesota. They turned the ball over 22 times in that game against Minnesota, but somehow ended up winning by 20 points because the leading rebounder, Jordan Murphy from Minnesota, went down. So Michigan State had a huge game rebounding on the boards against Minnesota. But what a turnaround in the past 2 rounds Michigan State has had. Against LSU, they only turned the ball over 7 times. Against Duke in the Elite 8, same thing, 7 turnovers. R.J. Barrett for Duke alone had 7 turnovers. He had the same amount of turnovers as Michigan State did as a team. The Spartans, they just played, hands down, they played their best game of the season against Duke. They forced Duke into 17 turnovers. Winston led the way. much better than Trey Jones in that game. Cassius Winston led the way with 20 points and 10 assists in a double-double. And now the only obstacle lying in between Michigan State's path from the Final Four to the national championship is this team. The number 3 seed, the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and top 10 NBA projected draft pick, Jarrett Culver. As Michigan State, they've put on an incredible run. Can they keep it together and keep their winning streak going against an incredible Texas Tech defense that ranks inside the top 5 in all college basketball? And that's what I'll get to next. So let's turn the script here to the number 3 seed, the Texas Tech Red Raiders, as I'll preview Texas Tech for you guys, where its head coach Chris Beard, he's led the team in the program to his first ever Final Four. Chris Beard right now with a 7-1 record in the NCAA tournament since taking over as head coach back in 2016. Defense, defense, defense. This is what Texas Tech strives for. They've held their opponents to average only around 59 points per game this season. Texas Tech has allowed 8 of their teams to score 50 points or less in games this season, as the Red Raiders have held opponents to an average of 57 points in their first 4 tournament games as well. In the round of 32, Texas Tech took out a very good Buffalo team. They only gave up 58 points to Buffalo, which is a top 10 scoring team in the nation for points scored. In the Sweet 16, they shut out Michigan. They only gave up 16 points at halftime to Michigan. That is an NCAA tournament record for fewest points allowed at halftime, and Texas Tech accomplished that feat on the defensive end. Texas Tech, they also allowed Michigan to shoot a dismal 1 for 19 from 3-point range in the Sweet 16 game. In the Elite 8 matchup, the last game against Gonzaga, the Red Raiders only gave up 69 points to the number 1 scoring team in the nation, who averages almost 89 points per season. For Texas Tech, you think that their defense is good? Their offense also has some pretty good scores on it as well. The leading scorer, also the leading assist man, and the leading rebounder. That all goes to one player on this team. That is Jarrett Culver. Culver has scored double-digit points in every single game this season, except for one of them where they played against Kansas State back in conference play. The Red Raiders need another strong performance from Culver to advance their first ever national title game, as Culver is averaging 21.5 points per game in this tournament alone. Texas Tech will need a huge game from the 2 other guards as well. Davide Moretti, the Italian, and Matt Mooney as well. Moretti, he scored double-digit points in the last 11 games here for Texas Tech. He's the number 1 3-point shooter in the Big 12 Conference. Davide Moretti converts on 48% of his 3-point shots from behind the arc this season. Also, if Texas Tech is up by single digits or so in the last minute against Michigan State, Texas Tech will turn to Davide Moretti's way. They will hand that ball off and put that ball into Moretti's hands, because he ranks 2nd in all college basketball right now, behind Kentucky's Tyler Hero, for the best free throw shooting percentage this season for Davide Moretti. Texas Tech with their 3rd shooting guard, that is Matt Mooney. Matt Mooney just had his highest scoring performance in point total in the last 2 months. He scored 17 points in the Elite 8 against Gonzaga. They really need to get these 3 guards going if they want to beat Michigan State in this game. That is Jarrett Culver, Davide Moretti, and Matt Mooney for Texas Tech. Also inside, look for senior forward Tarik Owens, who has been coming off a huge 3-block game against Gonzaga. He needs to step up as well. He's got a very tough matchup. He'll be going up against either Kenny Goins of Michigan State or Xavier Tillman. As Tarik Owens, he had that 3-block game against Gonzaga. He has 10 blocks so far in this entire tournament. So Texas Tech, with their strong defense here, they'll be going up against one of the best passing teams in the nation, leading the way in assists. That is the Michigan State Spartans. Also, they're a very good team inside the interior. They can shoot the ball as well inside the 3-point arc with Kenny Goins, Xavier Tillman, Aaron Henry, Nick Ward. They're also pretty good on the outside perimeter, leading the way with Matt Mcquaid and Cassius Winston. So if you haven't done so already, make sure to hit that like button down below. Subscribe to my channel if you're new as well, as I will be calling play-by-play of the 2 Final Four games. Virginia going up against Auburn in this one. Michigan State going up against Texas Tech. I'll also be calling play-by-play for the national title game as well on my channel Behind the Arc Basketball on YouTube. So also make sure to check out my other prediction for, or the Final Four preview for Virginia going up against Auburn. I put the link down in the description down below. Let me know in the comments also who you're rooting for in the Final Four, who you got in the national title game as well. Let me know down in the comment section below, as this has been another presentation of Behind the Arc Basketball on YouTube, Final Four style here. The preview of Michigan State, the number 2 seed, going up against the number 3 seed, Texas Tech.